When Adam's mother told him that the Navy was sending all dependent families back to the mainland, his first thought was, no, he wouldn't go. No, he wouldn't leave his father. He couldn't. The thought of leaving his father here at the bottom of Pearl Harbor was too awful. But where was he going to live? He could hear his mother saying it. How are you going to get along? Who's going to make your meals? He'd live with Davy, sleep in his room. He'd eat with the family, find a job so he could pay them, and he and Davy would go to school together. Mom? She was packing a trunk, emptying the shelves in the hall closet. Mom, I'm going to stay here, Adam said. Well, what does that mean? She handed him several blankets. Put these in the trunk. I'm staying here in Hawaii, he said. I want to. His mother became very still. She seemed to grow taller and ominous. Do you really think I'd leave you here, Adam? Why would I do that? Well, why not? You're leaving Dad. He hadn't meant to say it that way. It came out sounding so brutal. And when he tried to explain, he made it worse. Dad's here! We're leaving him! He cried. We're abandoning him! You know we don't have a choice. We're in the Navy. She took the blankets from him and put them in the trunk. Mom, he started to argue. How are they in the Navy anymore? It's only because of Dad. Don't, she said. Please. She took him by the shoulders and looked long and hard into his eyes. What would I do without you? She said at last. I would miss you too much. They sailed home on a troop ship. Navy families, defense workers, and the worst of the wounded men crowded the ship. There were no bands, no banners, and no waving and cheering. The flower ladies were there, as always, selling leis off the back of their trucks. Adam bought a bunch, and they all wore them. He stood by his mother and Bee by the railing, and the three of them a little apart from the other passengers. His mother held Bee in her arms. Adam thought of Rinaldi and Brown and the Marine sergeant, and the officer with his arm in a sling. Where were they now? That day had been like a life apart, a whole life lived in one day. When the war started, he had gone out in the morning, riding his bike down Kamehameha Highway, and he had come home that night carrying a gun. He looked back at the city as they moved out of the harbor. Beyond Honolulu, clouds streamed across the Ku'ulau Mountains like long, fat cigars. His father had smoked cigars sometimes when he was feeling especially good. Adam liked remembering that, and it hurt him too. It hurt him to think of his father sealed into that ship. It would always hurt him. People said his father and the other men were heroes who had died at their stations, heroes who had done amazing things, endured, and stood fast. And they had. But when he thought of them down there, when he thought of the way they had died, without a chance even to fight back, it only hurt. In the distance, Honolulu and the beaches flattened out until the island seemed to be just mountains floating over the sea. It's like a dream, his mother said. So beautiful and so awful. As they sailed past Diamond Head, the flat old volcano, people dropped their leis into the sea. It meant you were coming back. Adam let his lei go and watched it drop into the water. Goodbye, Dad. In the water, the flowers formed rafts of color. For a moment, the whole sea seemed to glow, and then it faded.